College Football Podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Sadkoviak Clinton. Sir, it is June. I guess that means technically 1 month closer to the season, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good, man. It was a fun day. Been spending a lot of time outside because we finally don't have rain in Columbus every day. So we are no longer Seattle of the East. We're enjoying some, I'd say, near 80-degree weather today. Got rid of my beard over, when was that, yesterday? So now I have a nice beard tan line that runs the course of my face from where I had it. But other than that, man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk some of our topics tonight. How are you?
I worked a Monday today for the first time in 3.5 years, and it's got my feng shui all messed up.
Wow. Why did you do that?
That's my new schedule. I work Mondays now.
What's your day off?
Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, so you're just working 5 days.
Now I just don't work 12 hours on Tuesday, so hopefully I will hate my life a little less tomorrow night.
Much more glorious for you.
I get to sleep in tonight, which is good. I need sleep. I am tired.
Yeah. How do you think your day off? Sounds like you were decently productive on your days off. How are you going to recoup that?
I don't. I mean, I only work 7 to 12 today. It's not like I work that long. But Sunday sucks a lot more when you work on Monday.
Especially it's 7 a.m. Welcome to my life.
It felt like all day yesterday was just full of anxiety, and I got to get everything done. It sucked.
Does anybody else in your company have the schedule like you had, 1 day off in a week?
Yeah, there's a couple people who work 4/10s.
Nice. I feel like that's more doable without children, but that's neither here nor there. Well, if you guys are joining us tonight, our topics of discussion are going to be straight seeding in the playoffs, plus just general playoff expansion talk. I know Ryan has kind of been holding that on his chest for a little bit. And we're going to do some over-under talk. I came up with some questions for Ryan last year. Ryan hit me with the over-under stuff, so this year we're going to flip it, and we're going to hit Ryan with the over-unders. And then we're going to talk some impactful Big Ten games this year that we think could help shape the course of not only the Big Ten season, but potentially a team making the playoffs. Again, if you guys are hanging out with us, check us out on Twitter and Instagram, I guess X and Twitter, ITPCFB. Give us a follow there. Check us out on the YouTube. Hit like and subscribe. Just search us ITPCFB. And then you can find us also every day once we drop a pod in your podcast feed of Spotify, Amazon, Apple, wherever you can get it, inside the Pylon Midwest College Football Podcast. Ryan, where do you want to start tonight? Do you want to start with the seeding? You want to start with the
I mean, we could just talk with the straight seeding. That seems to be the big news. We can just kind of get it out of the way here.
All right. So my first just general thought when I thought about this for you, let's knock out what we labeled it as straight seeding. You like it? You don't like it? What do you think?
I mean, I like it. I think, like, on the surface, it's good, right? Like, in theory, that means we should get more quote-unquote compelling first-round matchups. You're playing teams that are a little bit more evenly matched as opposed to the facade of Texas and Penn State, who were 3 and 4, but were closer to 1 and 2 than they were to 12, playing overmatched teams in the first round. No disrespect to Clemson and SMU, I guess, but I don't know. It's just like, I'd say that's how every real sport does it, but that's not true because, you've had the weird intricacies of the NFL schedule. You have the play-ins with baseball and basketball. You have the weird thing that hockey does where they insist on the second and third place teams in division playing each other in the first round regardless of where they finish. So you get a bunch of people belly aching about that. So, I mean, every sport does it different and they're all stupid in their own ways. But at least in theory, the straight seeding model gets you closest to a compelling overall product, I guess, instead of, I mean, there's still going to be blowouts, right? Like you'll still get, I mean, I think Ohio State was a good example. They were kind of like the leading up to this 12-team playoff. They're kind of like the straw man boogeyman argument. Like, well, yeah, you're going to get a lower ranked team that wins, but it's just going to be a 3-loss Alabama or Ohio State or whatever getting their mulligan or whatever. So there's still going to be instances like that where teams get blown out in the first round. It's whatever it happens. I think trying to make a referendum on an individual result or a group of results is kind of dumb. I also think it's kind of dumb that you did the playoff for 1 year and now you have to change it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like that was an unsuccessful playoff. I thought it was pretty compelling. And guess what? We're going to change it again next year. So I think, I mean, it's nice because now you don't have to have this 6-step fucking ESPN soliloquy every time they come out of a commercial break on any one of their broadcasts from the middle of October on explaining how the playoff works. It's a little more self-explanatory now, but you change it for 1 year just to change it next year. You're changing it every 3 years, but it's going to be hard for people to keep up. I mean, it'll be hard for casuals to keep up, right? Like people who are in this every single day are going to be caught up, but like the people who don't pay attention to college football from January to August will be like, wait, what? So I think that's not great, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, in case you guys have lived under a rock, over the past week we learned about the college football playoff moving to a straight seeding model for the 2025 season, meaning your top 4 teams in the final CFP rankings get the bye in the first round. Whereas last year that necessarily wasn't the case. They played a little more favorite to here's our 5 conference champs. The best 4 of those get the byes. So that eliminates that. So Ryan, would you consider then Notre Dame the biggest winner of this straight seeding?
Oh yeah, I mean,
because now they can get a first round bye.
Everyone continues to clamor and whine and bitch and moan about Notre Dame being in a conference, and every change that college football has made the last 3 years makes it less and less likely that Notre Dame's going to join a conference. I mean, we said it last show. I don't know why people continue to waste oxygen on this, because they're going to continue to be independent until the Super League forms in 5 to 7 years, whenever that happens, and then they will be in the Super League. So you'll get your wish then. But I mean, it's just so funny because you'll watch Ohio State fans in 2020 ranted against the Big Ten because they wanted to cancel the season. They're like, why are we even in this stupid conference? Let's just be independent. And then Michigan fans in 2023 during the sanctions and the Big Ten and all the nonsense with Jim Harbaugh, they're like, why are we in this stupid conference? Let's just be independent. No one wants to be in a conference until you're trying to shit on the team who can successfully run its program without being in a conference. It's jealousy. It's all it is. It's jealousy that everyone else has to play under a set of rules that are governed by a centralized body that don't always make sense, and the people who are running the league aren't always competent, whereas Notre Dame just does its own thing. Cool. So then if your team could do it, they would. They can't do it. Sorry. Your team sucks and you're irrelevant.
I think in the standpoint of being a lifelong Ohio State Big Ten fan, it is what it is. Would I love to have Notre Dame in the Big Ten? Absolutely. Am I going to sit here and cry about it? No. It is what it is. We get the fun matchups at the end of the season now because of the expanded playoff. So for all those Big Ten and SEC people who want to bitch about Notre Dame, guess you better beat them then.
Well, and it's also great for everyone else in a conference, because if we were doing this last year, the Big Ten and the SEC would have had 2 teams through to the quarterfinals without playing a first round game.
Yeah.
You can get multiple bids as a conference now. I kind of got a chuckle of the Boise State athletic director being like, why don't you call this the Boise State rule? I'm like, they didn't just make it because of you, buddy. They made it because of everything else that happened in the first round. But now you get a situation where the teams who are the best in the regular season are justly rewarded for that. So you can say that even if you don't win your conference, it still makes the regular season meaningful, which is, it seems like with some of these other discussions surrounding the 16 eventual expansion to 16 or 14 or whatever it ends up being, it seems like a lot of that conversation around the automatic bids for the Big Ten, for the SEC, it just seems counterintuitive to wanting to value the regular season, because it does the exact opposite.
Before we get to those models, I was going to ask, do you think then the group of 5 is the biggest loser in this scenario?
I wouldn't necessarily say the group of 5. I would say everyone who's really not the Big Ten or the SEC, because none of them would have had, even been close to getting an auto bid last year.
No, certainly.
I guess there's a universe where if SMU holds off Clemson and wins that game, maybe you feel bad for them, but it's also one of those things that it's like, whatever. It's to me, it's the best of both worlds, right? Because you're still giving conference championships value. You're still throwing a bone to the other conferences that are not the Power 2. you're still getting playoff access for those schools guaranteed. You're just saying, like, look, you're not getting a free pass to the second round. So that way you can kind of appease the strength of schedule nonsense cities that have been on the internet where it doesn't even matter. It's like, okay, well, now it does. Now you're incentivized to play a tough regular season schedule because maybe you go 11-1, but you beat 3 ranked teams, or you go 10-2, but you beat 5 ranked teams. And it's like, oh, guess what? You're number 4 in the nation because you're the best 2-loss team and there was no undefeated teams and 3 1-loss teams or whatever.
Yep. Do you, off the top of your head, because I don't know what the top 4 would have been last year, Oregon?
Yeah, it would have been Oregon. No, it was Oregon. It would have been Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Penn State.
Okay, there it is. Yeah, I forgot about Texas and Georgia. I don't know, man. I look forward to the straight seeding model. I think it is beneficial for beginning matchups, but kind of the meat and potatoes of where I think you would like to dive into as well as me are the models that are being proposed. Right now, we have the 5-11, which is just essentially carryover from what this one is, but with more teams. You get your 5 conference champs, get into the playoff, and 11 at-larges. However, the glorious conference that we cover, the Big Ten, has proposed a different model, a 4-4-2-2 1-3 model. And what those numbers stand for are 4 Big Ten locks, 4 SEC locks, 2 Big 12, 2 ACC locks, 1 group of 5 lock, and 3 at-larges. And in theory, it's really only 2 at-larges because as long as Notre Dame in this new era of 16 teams has 9 wins, they're going to be in the playoffs.
Well, I wouldn't say 9 wins, but I think what I saw was language that if they're in, whether it's 14 or 16, if they're ranked in the final top 16, they're guaranteed a spot.
Yeah. So your thoughts, Ryan? What are your thoughts on the Big Ten's proposal of the 4-4-2-2-1-3 model?
I think it's funny that it's always the tough manly men who cry about participation trophies ruining sports and why does everyone need a handout, blah, blah, blah. And it's always they're the ones who are clamoring for shit like this, which is literally codifying participation trophies in conference play. Like, what's the point of doing this? Like, I don't get it at all, but I understand the allure for the Big Ten, where if you have 4 guaranteed bids, then you can turn your stupid conference championship weekend into a conference tournament weekend where you're pitting 1 versus 8 and yada, yada, yada. And then the winners of those games get the auto berths. But then why are we playing a regular season? Literally, what is the point? Just play round robin throughout the course of the season. And then your last 4 team standings say, congratulations, you're in the playoff. There's no point to play non-conference games. There's no point to play a conference schedule. Like, you're putting 8 teams in a position where they can qualify for the playoff. 8, half your league, your gargantuan monstrosity of a fucking league that spans from New York City to LA, that has 18 teams in it, and you still call yourself the Big Ten. You're putting half of them in a position to qualify for the playoff, regardless of merit. Do you know what that would have equated to last year, Clinton? That would have been, who finished 8 in the Big Ten last year? Minnesota playing Oregon on conference championship weekend. And what if Dylan Gabriel blows out his knee on the first series of the game and Minnesota ekes out a disgusting 13-10 win where Oregon can't move the ball because they don't have a functioning passing attack? You're going to put Minnesota in the playoff then?
Well, I think
give me a break.
The proposal, from what I learned from Ty and Dan today, is 1 and 2 still play the conference championship. And then they do, it's championship week now, and they would play 3 and 6, 4 and 5. So your 1 and 2 would still be in, and they're automatic locks. But your 3 and 6 and your 4 and 5 play. And that's what the Big Ten was trying to propose for the SEC as well. But you're right, though. Who was 3? Indiana last year?
Hold on. Yes. So you're going to have, hold on. You're going to have Indiana playing Iowa.
For a shot to go.
For a shot to go to the playoff.
And is Indiana
an 8-5 Iowa team? Get out of here. Everyone's been crapping on, rightfully, the SEC, crying about their 3-loss teams. You want to put an 8-5 Iowa team that played a backup linebacker at quarterback late in the season? You want to put that team in a position to make the playoff? Get out of my face with that nonsense. That is garbage. And if you're arguing for it, you are garbage too. That is trash. There's no point. There's literally no point to play a football season if that's the conversation we're having.
Yep. And then their thought was, as they were elaborating on, let's say that scenario happens, right? That Iowa knocks off Indiana. In this scenario, we know what the answer would be, but that 3 seed would still have a shot at the at-large. Well, if it was Indiana last year, they would have not even sniffed the playoff if they lose that game.
Well, no, because then that's the other thing is, are you releasing a whole new top 16 after your bullshit fucking roulette tournament at the end of the season? Or is it just like, no, this is what it's going to be? So then Indiana loses that game and you're going to still put them in the playoff, even though they lost to an 8-5 Iowa team with no quarterback? Okay.
And no big wins?
Like, there's no... Like, we want to talk about what was the impetus for... Well, that's a stupid question because the impetus is always money, and that's what the impetus for this is money, because that's all Tony Petitti sees is, I see television dollars in a television product. Brother, fuck off. Literally go back to Fox or whatever shithole you crawled out of and quit ruining the sport. I'm so mad I forgot what I was just going to say. Oh, no. So the impetus for moving to 12, like the reason why so many people were jazzed for it, right, was playoff access. So more games are meaningful towards the end of the season. You're sitting there in November. And that's what we got this year. We got games like Miami versus Georgia Tech that 2 years ago no one would have gave two shits about. It was all of a sudden compelling November television because it knocked Miami out of the playoff. That doesn't matter anymore. You want to expand playoff access, and you're going to sit there and gift 4 bids on no merit whatsoever just because, well, we think that these conferences are better. What a great way to alienate the 80% of the country that you just started winning back. It's stupid. It's nonsense. Literally none of these decisions are like, I chortled when someone asked Greg Sankey a question about why are you ever considering the betterment of the sport? He's like, well, that's not my job. I'm like, motherfucker, yes, it is. It is literally your job. You guys, like, the people in charge of this sport are so short-sighted, looking only for immediate financial gain, that they're paying no credence to what this is going to do to the long-term fandom of college football. Congratulations, you made an extra $30 million a year in the short term. There's not going to be a sport in 20 years because you motherfuckers ruined it. There's going to be a generation of fans who grow up not knowing these rivalries, not knowing what made college football great, because you're turning this shit into NFL light. This isn't even NFL light. This is Participation Trophy Central. Here, come support my big, beautiful tournament between 8-5 Iowa and Indiana. Don't care. Literally could not care less about that. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. Don't put these teams that have no business being in the playoff near the playoff.
We said it last year at the end. If you want to make the playoff, don't lose 3 games.
Win your football games.
Now, in the new world of 16, I'm sure multiple teams will make it with 3 losses, but that's neither here nor there. This was one, though, that, again, Ty and Dan were talking about, and with Petitti's conference, was in this proposed model by the Big Ten that the SEC would be more open to having 9 conference games. Because then they're guaranteed their 4, and then they're envisioning they're going to get at least 1 or 2 more out of the at-larges.
Well, yeah, because if you might as well play 9 conference games then, because there's no reason to play a regular season outside of conference play.
Unless you're getting 4 to 5 losses, there's no repercussions for losing, other than your ranking, right? But at the end of the day, if you're turning this towards like an NFL thing, the NFL's goal is just getting the damn playoffs, right? I mean, yeah, you want the number 1 seed so you can host throughout, but just get in, see what happens.
Okay,
well, just
so
get 9-3 Bama in.
Here, I don't actually know how these the SEC was a train wreck last year with the tiebreakers. There was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-way tie for 4th place here at 5-3 in again. We're inviting a bunch of 5-3 teams in their conference to potentially participate for the playoff. So, assuming the same thing in the SEC, you would have had Texas versus Georgia still playing. Then you would have had some variation of Tennessee, Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, and Texas A&M playing each other for the right to participate in the playoff. Why? What of those teams deserved to had a good enough season last year you're going to put fucking 8-5 Texas A&M in the playoff, 9-4 LSU, who got the shit kicked out of them by 8-5 Texas A&M, an old 5-3 Ole Miss team that lost to Kentucky,
Bama who lost to Vandy,
Bama who got their ass kicked by an Oklahoma team that did not have an offense last year,
no quarterback,
or they had no wide receivers. They had 5 wide receivers hurt. The water boy was playing wide receiver for them.
We got Red Ryan out there, guys.
You could. Listen, I saw a video of a guy doing footwork drills the other day, and I cannot stress to you how if I tried to move my feet that quickly, how quickly I would face plant. I could have played wide receiver for Oklahoma last year. They were that thin, and you're going to put that. You're going to put that a team that lost to that shit in a position to qualify for the playoff. Get out of my face with that. It's trash. It's garbage, and everyone arguing for it is trash and garbage. And you should be ashamed of yourself if you're arguing for it.
Yeah.
I don't even want to hear if you're arguing for it because I'm just going to laugh at you.
Well,
your opinion's
Ryan,
irrelevant.
Don't tune in to Joel Klatt's latest episode, Ryan.
I'm not going to say anything mean about Joel Klatt on the internet because I got all that off pre-show. I could not give less of a fuck what Joel Klatt thinks about college football.
Well, the Big 12, we have good news. The Big 12, the ACC, and I would assume the Group of Five reject this proposal. So I don't know. I don't know if you've heard how many votes this takes or whatever the voting thing is to be able to approve this.
I have no idea.
But apparently they have until like mid-December to get it figured out because then they got to prepare for next year because they wanted to expand this thing after 2 years anyways and couldn't just left it alone. So the Big 12 and the ACC clearly want the 5 and 11, right? They get their automatic person in. They get more shots with the at-larges in a year that they have a monster year where they have 4 or 5 teams capable of getting in. However, to counter that, this is where Sankey said, this model, we likely won't go to 9 conference game schedule because we don't know how the committee will weigh the criteria, which is essentially what we're doing right now, right? Like, so maybe if the committee has more bona fide criteria of what gets you in the playoff, but to me, that sounded more like, well, we still don't know if 8-4 Alabama would get in this scenario after they lost.
Here's the thing. Look at South Carolina is really the only team that this doesn't apply to, but look at Ole Miss's schedule and look at Alabama's schedule from last year and ask me how they could have made their non-conference schedule legitimately worse and what impact that would have had on their season. It would have had literally none. They literally could not have had a worse non-conference schedule than they did. So they're all out here saying this bullshit about, well, what's our prerogative to schedule tough non-conference games because it clearly doesn't matter. Well, first of all, the only reason that you were even in playoff discussion at 9-3 is because of the schedule that you played. Miami was 10-2 and you finished ahead of them. That right there refutes this nonsense that strength of schedule does not matter. Because if strength of schedule did not matter, we would not be having any sort of Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss discussions. But the thing that these arguments seem to miss is that Ole Miss and Alabama didn't miss the playoff because they lost to Penn State in the non-conference. They played shitty non-conference schedules and lost to shittier teams in their conference. Kentucky won one SEC game last year, Clinton.
It was Ole Miss.
It was Ole Miss. Don't lose to a team that went 1-7 in your conference, and you would have made the playoff last year. It is literally that simple. Mm-hmm. Ole Miss's non-conference schedule was Wake Forest and an FCS team and 2 G5 teams that had no business being on the field with them.
Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, and I'm forgetting the other one.
Again, I ask, how can Ole Miss make that any worse than it already is? They literally cannot. You're not playing a non-conference schedule. None of these arguments are based in any sort of logic or facts. You lost 3 conference games last year. You didn't go 7-1 in your conference and 2-2 in non-conference because you decided to play Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Penn State. You won your shitty non-conference games. You lost to crappy teams, and you lost to crappy teams in your conference. Going to 8 or 9 is not going to change that.
No.
So what's the border? Like, I don't understand what they're arguing for.
I think the one positive is what I'm reading and hearing is the coaches are against the proposed Big Ten model. They want to stay at the 5 and 11 model. They don't want the additional with the what if play-in games.
No, yeah, they don't want to have to play an extra game at the end of the year. If the coaches had their way, they get rid of the damn conference championship games too.
Well, I don't know.
Which is another stupid relic that they need to get rid of.
I think you could have talked about a couple of them that wouldn't have wanted to expand the playoff. Just the added depth of the season, how much. Listen, for as much people bemoan Ohio State and even Notre Dame and Ohio State were for when they needed portal additions and when kids could leave. they were at a bit of a disadvantage this year because of how long the season ran,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to get a jump start in their recruiting for the next year, also at a disadvantage because of all the dates. Now, we could probably finagle that with different dates and timelines to help this out in the future, but the same thing's going to happen this year when, I don't know, say Oregon and Georgia meet in the national championship this year. They're going to be at a slight disadvantage for transfer portal and recruiting into the next cycle because of the length of the season. So I would bet some of the coaches would have been fine just leaving it at 4. Now, Ohio State's not going to say that because they wouldn't have made the playoff, but on the premise of it. But a lot of the coaches, it sounds like they would prefer to stay 5 and 11. So again, without knowing the complete innards of how this voting or how this proposal can move forward or not, I don't know. If you're going to let the Big Ten and the SEC drive it, we're going to be doing the 4-4-2-2-1-3 model. You know it's going to happen. But if you let the TV guys drive it, ESPN and Fox, you know where it's heading, especially Fox. But
I'm holding out hope that the SEC sticks with the 5 and 11 because they have this weird fallacy in their brain that they're going to get 7 at-large teams, which is probably not going to happen, but whatever.
Yep. And, so Stuart Mandel brought up, he went back through the history of the playoff and said if you expanded it to this 16, the SEC would have gotten 4 or 5 in almost every year. So why do you need locks? You're already a lock.
No, you're already going to get it.
You don't need something official to say it. Now, the Big Ten might want to whine and pine for it because in some years they're not getting 4 teams in. But I don't know. Interesting to say the least. But that's where we are, guys. Enjoy the straight seeding this year. Ryan, do you know, are they going to continue straight seeding into next season? Have you heard? Just for future, we're going to leave it straight seeding from now on or not?
I would assume so, yes. But I mean, if you go, well, that's the other thing with 16 is because if you think they're 16, they're in theory shouldn't be a bye. But I've also seen something where it's like they had this weird where it's like 16 is playing. I don't even remember how they had it, but then there was like buys and double buys. It was just weird. So I don't know. I truly don't know.
Well, if we're anything like the NCAA March Madness, who's going to, 76 or 78 for this season, we just can't stop at one spot. It's never good enough. Yeah. It's just all playing games they're adding, Ryan. It's not more meaningful games. It's just more playing games.
Yep.
Let's get more sites to match Dayton, Ohio, and have more 16 seeds play to get in the tournament.
Yeah, pretty much.
College sports. That's what it is. Let's get to the over-under win totals, Ryan. I think we've kind of beat the previous horse pretty good. Let's start, Ryan. So I came up with some questions here for you, my man. I have on our sheet that I'm sure you can see all the over-under win totals for each team. So number one, I wanted to start with, there are 3 teams with 10.5 win totals, guys, projections: Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Of those 3, Ryan, which team, or you could say teams, are most likely to go over their 10.5, and which one or more are most likely to go under?
Oh my God, why would you do this to me?
I don't know. I looked like a complete buffoon last year on my over-under show. Shirts are.
Oh my!
I did get the Purdue one right. I'm telling you. I said they were hiring a kite to give them 6 wins. I said they wouldn't get more than 2.
I don't think it was 6. I think it was like 4.5.
Yeah. Of those 3.
Fuck, dude. So I think I'm gonna go Oregon.
For which?
Is the most likely to go over.
Okay.
And this is entirely a schedule thing. So looking at Ohio State's schedule, you start against Texas. You have Illinois, you have Penn State, and you already have a loss against Michigan. So that means they have to go 11-0 otherwise. We're at the point, Clinton. It's a loss until proven otherwise.
And we were that way many years with Michigan. So
I know.
Right. You got to
Table turn.
Listen, okay. You and I were so sold that last year was an absolute gimme W.
Dude,
I can't possibly give them a W this year.
I had so much money on that game for Ohio State. I'm like, there's no way they lose this game. They are going to embarrass them. And I doubled down at halftime and I lost it all.
Double whammy, embarrassed.
But so like Ohio State, that's just a very difficult ask because you're starting the season in a semifinal rematch, a team that's bringing a lot back in Texas. You're a team that's not bringing a lot back. I don't like. It's one of those games that you can lose and it doesn't end your season. I mean, you could get the shit kicked out of you and it still doesn't end your season because you have the Big Ten schedule and you have plenty of opportunities to make up ground in the Big Ten given what you play. But that's also the issue. Like you have one landmine that you can step on, and there's appears to be a couple on this Ohio State schedule. I know we just did our power ranking show last week, and we both had Penn State number one. But for Penn State to hit the over on that, they have to beat at least one of Oregon or Ohio State and then not lose to Indiana or anyone else on the schedule. I feel like with Penn State, I am high on them. I showed that last week by having them number one in my post-spring power rankings, but I also am going to have to see it before I believe it with them beating a top 5 team.
Listen, their history is 10-2, baby. Just because they had an anomaly last year and went 11-1.
Well, they had a one game season last year, Clinton, and they lost that one game. Whereas with Oregon, you do have a difficult game against Indiana that's coming out of a bye after you are at Penn State, but you host them. The rest of the Big Ten schedule is pretty manageable. There's definitely
Iowa.
You have to go to Iowa for sure. There's a couple landmines on here, but just based on that, that's kind of one of those. I look at Penn State as a toss-up game. I would slightly favor them, especially at home against Indiana. You get Minnesota and USC at home. Going to Washington will be tough, especially if they're better. Going to Iowa could be tough for sure as well, but I just am not seeing as many landmines on the Oregon schedule. Again, I'm not saying I would put money on any of these teams to hit their over, but if I were to pick one that is the most likely, I would say Oregon, and that's just because of the lack of landmines on their schedule.
This could be all 3 teams at 10 wins by the end of the year.
Well, I know, and I'm going to say that here, and Dante Moore comes out and could look awful, and they lose by 15 to Penn State, and then it's like, oh, good job, Ryan. You're a dumbass. What else is new?
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, we have the next 2 highest are 2 teams at 8.5 win projections, the Indiana Fighting Signetti Hoosiers and the Michigan Wolverines. So my question is kind of 2-jointed here. We're going to ask the same question for both teams.
Okay.
If Indiana loses 2 games in September, Ryan, we're going to say that's Illinois and Iowa. Will they get over their 8.5 win total?
No.
If Michigan loses 2 games in September, Oklahoma, Nebraska, will they go over their 8.5 win total?
Absolutely. No.
So neither team.
No. So I think it's one of those things. So like 2 different things here too, right? If Indiana loses back-to-back to Illinois and Iowa, I think that's going to maybe reset external expectations on them a little bit because, they'd be 3-2 heading into October, going into a bye week before going to Oregon, and their wins would be Kennesaw, Indiana State, and Old Dominion. That's embarrassing. That's an embarrassing non-conference schedule.
Almost gave me a smoker cough.
But the issue with Indiana then is, to hit that over, you have to beat one of Oregon or Penn State, and both of those games are on the road. And if you're losing back-to-back, I think Illinois is going to be really good this year. I think Iowa is going to be perfectly fine, a top 25 team for sure. I don't know about more than that, but playing at Iowa is a tough place to play. But that's one of those games that if you lose, then all of a sudden, well, what happens if Michigan State's better? What if UCLA takes a big step forward with Nico?
Wisconsin at the end of the year.
Yeah, Wisconsin at the end of the year. We're not even going to look at Maryland and Purdue, that they're not losing those games. But, what if Wisconsin takes a little bit of a step forward? That becomes a toss-up then potentially. So I think that's more of a schedule factor for Indiana, just because they could still go 8-4. Then it could still be a really good season. If you go 8-4, if you're Indiana and you lose to Illinois, I know Indiana fans are not going to like losing to Illinois, but if you lose to Illinois, at Oregon, at Penn State, and at Iowa, that's not a bad season. That's 3 tough ass places to play.
Absolutely.
That's how you follow up a surprise playoff run. Yes. If you got to look good in those games, you can't get your ass kicked. But
we talked about it with Sammy. Sammy set the same precedent. He's like, listen, 8-4 is a successful season. Like he said, you're going to have the fans who think we're doing 11-1 again, and that's certainly possible.
You know what, Clinton? I might recant on Michigan. Their schedule sucks. This is bad.
See, I discussed this with someone today. I don't think it's a bad schedule.
It's not good. It's not good.
You've got teams that
you were playing the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten. So there were
those are wins.
No, Clinton. I think there are 4 Big Ten teams who currently rank outside of the top 60 in SP plus, and Michigan plays all 4 of them.
Okay.
That's a bad schedule.
When I'm looking at this, I'm factoring in everything they lost on defense. And the person's argument back to is, well, I expect them to reload. That's great, but that's unproven. None of them are the studs they just lost to the first round of the NFL draft. Bryce Underwood is billed as a 5-star talent. We've never seen him take a college snap, and he still has 0 people to throw the ball to. No receivers, and now no tight end that we know about that's unproven. We expect O-line play to be better. We don't know that. So, again, I think it's personally, do you think it's feasible they lose Oklahoma and Nebraska? Especially
absolutely.
With no Sharon Moore.
No, I mean, at both. They are at both. I mean, I would bet that they're honestly probably an underdog, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're a relatively sizable underdog to Oklahoma right now.
If you're listening, guys, we're not an SEC podcast, but you need to go check out Oklahoma this year. They're going to be much better. They have a daunting schedule. I don't know if how much their win-loss total will prevail this year, but they will be better this year.
I can see if DraftKings has an early look-ahead line. You keep talking. I'll see if DraftKings has an early look-ahead line.
Everybody's so, like, someone told me today they have Wisconsin finishing last in the Big Ten. Like, there's no shot in hell that Wisconsin finishes below Purdue, Maryland, and Northwestern.
No, I mean, but there's a spectrum too. Like, you could say that's not going to happen, but you could also say I don't think Wisconsin's going to be particularly good.
No, but I just go back to the point, and I understand it's a new OC again, but it's back to something that fits Wisconsin better. Billy Edwards Jr. and his health is everything that rides on this team. They've had no quarterback play other than Braden. I turn over the ball at least 2 times a game lock because both their transfer quarterbacks have gotten hurt. Michigan, you've been to Michigan. Is Michigan that hard of an environment to play in? Is it that loud? I've heard it is not.
So right now, Oklahoma is a 1.5 point favorite against Michigan, which I honestly thought it would be higher than that.
I think it'll go up as the season gets near.
No, so I just golfed at the Big House on Saturday. I did that upper deck golf thing, and I was telling my buddy that I went with that for it being the largest stadium in America, it feels small.
Yeah, it's not loud.
It's not built like when we did the Ohio State 4-miler, when you finish on the 50 and you're standing at midfield, in the way that they build the stands there, where it's the upper deck is on top of the lower deck and it's just like everything is on top of you, that feels big because you're being surrounded. The way with the bowl and how it works, it just goes straight out. It's like it's just expanding away from you and it goes on forever, but you're not on top of anyone. It just doesn't feel like 110,000 people fit in there.
Yep. And I've heard that's what kind of affects the sound too, right? Like how it projects. It projects out and away.
Oh yeah, no, and it used to be a lot worse, but then when they put up the big old press box thingies that they have now, at least it traps it in a little bit, but it's still just like there's no it's not like Kyle Field where it's literally like they were showing during the Notre Dame game last year, like showing field shots and you literally could not even see the top of the stadium. It went so high. Yeah. Like that is how you keep sounding. That's how you keep that in. And that's not how the stadium's.
Having been there. Listen, I'm just looking at, I think October is an important month for Michigan. Wisconsin at home. You go to USC. You then draw Washington and the rivalry game with Sparty. I think you and I are both expecting Washington State to step forward this year. They have a dynamic quarterback who ate Michigan up last year when he came in the game. I would expect the same or maybe slightly better for USC. I'm not going to say worse. Wisconsin, as far as quarterback play, can't get any worse. It wasn't Michigan level, but it wasn't bad. And I guess we're going to take a small leap and say that Michigan State is at least better. Again, you don't know record-wise, but you think they would be better with year 2 of Childs. I'm 100% with you. The Purdue, the Northwestern, the Maryland run should be a clean sweep of 3-0. And then you get Ohio State. October to me is very telling. I just don't think the schedule is as easy as people think it is.
It's not a hard schedule, Clinton. Wisconsin stinks. They're gonna beat Wisconsin. USC stinks. It's the only hard part about that is you have to travel. It's not even a hard environment. You have to travel for that. And I guarantee you there's gonna be a ton of Michigan fans there. Washington showed us last year that they're not a good road team. Have to travel across the country. Michigan State is not a team that deserves the benefit of the doubt right now until they show that they deserve it. And then you literally play 3 garbage teams before Ohio State.
I'm calling it right now. They will go 2-2 in October.
That's not happening.
Guaranteed.
no. I will bet you real money
Because
on that.
if they come off losing Oklahoma, Nebraska, they're 2-2. The other thing, I guess, we don't even know now. The hearing stuff has started. We don't even know what the sanctions will be. Like, again,
Clinton, you guys keep talking about the sanctions. It's literally going to be nothing.
No, I'm saying if more is suspended for more games.
It won't be.
We'll see. I'd be willing to bet on that one too.
So when they're 7-4 going into that Ohio State game, how much more embarrassing does it make it that they beat you again?
It depends on what Ohio says. Ohio State also sitting with 2 or 3 losses at that point.
A loss that knocks Ohio State out of the playoff.
Well, they won't be if they're already sitting with 3 losses. They're not knocking them out. They'll already be out, which is entirely possible of Ohio State. Anyways, all right. So you're going Indiana. If that happens, they won't break it. Michigan will. Do you think they can climb out of it?
I think they could. I'm not saying that they will, but I'm far more confident in them than Indiana.
Yes,
in that particular instance.
I would agree to that. Indiana's schedule is tougher. All right. Now, we have a whole shit ton of teams at 7-5. We have 5 of them. I actually have to use the sheet to know this. And we have Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, USC, Washington. Those are the 5 teams. Of those 5 teams, Ryan, that you're looking at, who would you say of that group is most likely to push to make the playoff? I'm not saying he's a Big Ten champ.
Of the 7-5?
At large. Of the 7.
Clinton, that's Illinois. That's easy. That's my 4th best team in the Big Ten right there.
Okay. Now let's subtract your best team because most people think you're high. They don't think Illinois is good, and they think Illinois is going to suck, which I disagree with.
No. I cannot believe it's 7-5. I cannot believe that it's 7-5.
Yeah,
or it's 7.5.
I think you're the betting of our duo. You need to bet the over on that because it's going to happen.
What's the? I feel like there's no way that this is not good at. It's got to be like minus 250 or something like that. Yeah. Hold on.
Well, once you find that, you're then going to subtract Illinois because I knew you'd pick Illinois, and you got to tell me between Iowa, Nebraska, USC, and Washington.
Oh, hold on.
I was trying to be fair and give everyone a participation trophy and get talked about on this episode.
No, I can't find the whole. It won't let me just search it. God, I'm looking at DraftKings and I don't bet on DraftKings anymore because their betting interfaces. Actually, I can't deposit money in my account. It's really pissing me off. Where do I find the sports? Well, here we go. This is good radio.
This article I read thought so highly of Rutgers, they didn't even put them in.
That's crazy.
Total. I went through it again. I'm like, I'm short a team. Where am I missing? I'm like, they didn't put Rutgers in here. I had to go separate to go find Rutgers somewhere else.
Dude, can you hear Lucy? She is dreaming so hard right now.
Yep, that's what my dog does.
Okay, hold on. I think I found it. Okay, so here's important context to the conversation. So Ohio State's over 10.5 is juiced to plus 135, which means they don't find that. All the over-unders, same with Penn State, they're juiced to plus 135 as well. Michigan, Illinois, Illinois over 7.5 is minus 150, which means if I decided to put a $100 wager on it, I would only win $66.
That's not bad. It's $166.
No, I mean, we've had this conversation before. I'm not a big fan of betting futures because then that's just money that you don't have for the entire season.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that just seems. Illinois, that just seems low.
Those 4, who you taking? All 4 of them are fairly potentially even. I think you'd probably have USC. I think they were your lowest of the 4.
Yeah, I don't.
I have rankings.
No faith in USC winning more than 7 games. Fudge. That's tough, bud.
It is.
So there's a universe where Washington starts 3-0 before losing to Ohio State, but then they have Maryland and Rutgers. They could very well be 5-1 by the time they play Michigan and Illinois. The issue is you lose both of those games. You're now 5-3, which means you have to go 3-1 against Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA, and Oregon. That's tough.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. Who else do we have in here? We have Nebraska. I gotta pull up Nebraska's schedule because I don't remember the ins and outs of it. Pardon me. Okay, so Nebraska again in the Nebraska will know pretty quickly because I feel like if they lose to Cincinnati, they're not hitting the over.
Oh
If
my
they
God, that'd be bad.
if they beat Cincinnati, like again, looking at this schedule here, there's a very realistic chance that Nebraska could be 6-0 going to Minnesota
Mm-hmm.
because you have outside of Cincinnati, Akron, and HCU in the non-conference, and you get Michigan at home again without Sharon Moore before a bye week, and then you have Michigan State and at Maryland. I'm going to say Nebraska.
Okay.
I'm going to say Nebraska. Even if they don't beat Michigan, they could still be 5. They should still be 5-1 going to Minnesota. Even if you lose to Minnesota, so then you're 5-2. You got Northwestern the week after, should make you 6-2. You should beat at least one of USC, UCLA to get you to 7, and then you're probably not going to beat Penn State, but then you beat Iowa, you get to 8. I mean, that's a tough game. I don't know that I feel super confident in that either, but I don't feel confident at all in USC. I could see it with Washington. I mean, I guess let's look at Iowa.
I think what I
See, Iowa's tough because you're at Iowa State in the Cy-Hawk game out of conference, and that's a good ass Iowa State team, plus Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon in conference.
But you draw them at home, all 3 at home.
Yeah, but
I know.
I can
if
see
there's
them.
ever a place for someone to go and die, it is Iowa.
I guess
It's
you need
Iowa.
you need some quarterback play though to beat all
We
those
watched
teams.
a top-rated Penn State walk in there and get beat one year. Although
Okay.
they had to put their back quarterback.
I was gonna say, let's be realistic. The top-rated Penn State of the last 7 years, outside of last year, has been kind of a paper tiger. Clinton.
Yeah. My thought would be, I'm kind of riding and dying that Washington's going to improve. If I subtract Illinois, I would probably take Washington. Or Nebraska, because I believe in the quarterbacks. I don't know Gronowski well enough to know what he's going to be in the Big Ten.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that could be a big wild card. Could go one way or the other.
I expect Raiola to have steady improvement, and I expect Damon Williams to make Washington that much better. All right. The 6.5 is a quick one. There's only one team on here, Ryan, that's a 6.5 projection. It's Minnesota. True or false? Minnesota will break their win projection of 6.5 by the end of October. And in order to do that, they would have to be 7-1.
To beat it by the end of October.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna say false.
I think that's fair.
I think
Ohio State would have to be the only loss.
yeah. Well, I mean, they could beat Ohio State and lose to someone else in theory, but
Yes, but
that's just like going your 4 games in October outside of Purdue. You have Ohio State, Nebraska, and at Iowa. That's a tough stretch to go 3-1.
Yep, absolutely. Because I was looking at that early, and I was short by a couple games. Like, dumbass, we don't do math well on this show. And I was like, that doesn't add up, Clinton. That's only 6-1.
No, not a math podcast.
Got to go to the end of October. All right. The 5.5 win teams: UCLA, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Rutgers. Now, pay attention closely to this question, Ryan. Those are the 5.5 for 2025. Which coach do you trust most to get his team to bowl eligibility of those 4?
Coach?
Coach. I'm not asking team. I wanted to change it up. Which coach of those 4?
Fuck, man.
Do you, Ryan Sakowiak? That's how my car says it. Think can get his team to bowl eligibility from that group?
Oh, brother. I mean,
they all have tough schedules.
Well, that's kind of the thing is, like, in terms of like coaching acumen, I don't know if so much of the shine has worn off of Luke Fickell by now that the answer is not Luke Fickell, but also I know what Wisconsin's schedule is, and there's a 0% chance that they're hitting bowl eligibility. Okay. I shouldn't say 0% chance. They could always surprise, but you also
know Rutgers' schedule, though. It's not as deadly as Wisconsin, but it's pretty rough.
Well, right, but I also don't trust Greg Schiano because they should have done it last year and they didn't.
So that means you're going UCLA or Michigan State.
Yeah, I guess.
Which is
begrudgingly
experienced coaches.
Okay, but it's okay. So, but here's the thing: like, they start with Utah, which I don't know what to make of Utah because I think the era of Utah is you just think about them like, oh, that's a good Pac-12 program, and that's not what they are. That's not what they were last year. So I don't know that that's necessarily an insurmountable. And it's also one of those weird things too. Like then they're at UNLV, where it's like, well, they should win that game, but they also could lose it, and I wouldn't be shocked. But if let's just say they get through the non-conference 2-1, then you're at Northwestern, you host Penn State, you're at Michigan State, you host Maryland. I mean, they could and probably should, you could argue, beat Northwestern, Michigan State, and Maryland. So then all of a sudden you're at 5 wins. And then you just have to win one at Indiana, against Nebraska, at Ohio State, against Washington, and at USC, which is all that sounds a lot easier said than done. But I don't know. Well, then you have Michigan State, who should be 3-0 in the non-conference, but they lost to Boston College last year. You start Big Ten play at USC, at Nebraska, UCLA, at Indiana. That's a fucking tough schedule too, buddy. Oh my God. Can I take the under for all these teams?
No, because you're just picking the coach.
Okay, so if I'm picking the coach, I would trust Luke Fickell the most.
There you go. That's the answer.
I would trust Luke Fickell the most.
I think of those teams, I would bet UCLA most likely to go over the 5.5.
I mean,
but as the coach, I'm taking Fickell because he's been to the playoff. I can't take Deshaun Foster, who can't even speak at Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah, well, Clinton, you've listened to this podcast. We can't speak either, so.
We speak well.
I speak good. I mean, Wisconsin should still start the season 3-1. Then you have to find 3 wins against Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota. All you need is one of those ranked teams to take a step back. I mean, you could beat Minnesota. You could beat Washington.
Listen, Ryan, I've watched Wisconsin knock off good Ohio State teams in Madison.
It could happen.
Not impossible.
It could happen. They almost knocked off Oregon and Penn State last year.
Yes, we've said this, and people forget that. But yes, I think we're both riding Fickell there. All right, last one of the over-under. 3 teams are going to be in the Big Ten cellar that both you and I listed in power rankings and based off these over-under projections. Maryland, Northwestern, Purdue. Maryland's a 4.5. Northwestern, Purdue, 3.5. They all have one common opponent, Ryan. Playoff contender, Illinois. Which of those 3 teams do you think has the best shot to pull off the upset win over Illinois?
Oh. I mean, I'm going to say Northwestern just because I don't think Purdue or Maryland have any sort of ammunition to do it.
Purdue almost did it last year. Took them to overtime.
Yeah, but then they lost the 3 players on their team worth of shit to the transfer portal.
So, we're only bringing one guy back. Devin McCoy, as the video game would say. Hopefully that's fixed this year.
I mean, they, in theory, Northwestern has the best quarterback too in Preston Stone. So
if he wins the job. But then they still may have the best one. So
yeah.
Because Maryland's, I'm blanking on his name right now. He is unproven. He's from UCLA. He's unproven at this point. And I'm so low on Maryland, I can't get any lower. All right, let's wrap this up. I had you look up and think about, we both got games each, impactful Big Ten games. So let me explain my thought. This does not have to be. It can be whatever you want it to be, Ryan, but this was not meant to say you have to pick Penn State, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State as your only games. Those clearly are the most impactful games of the Big Ten season because they're going to directly affect the 3 teams we think are bona fide playoffs. If you want those games, take them. Otherwise, do you have any other games? I took it as I'm looking at all the schedules. I think this matchup here impacts just these Big Ten grouping of teams, not necessarily the playoff race.
So I did something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I picked the 2 most impactful dates on the Big Ten calendar because of the games at play.
Nice. Okay. Give them to me.
So the first one that I have is, I guess, ironically, it's not the start of conference season. For some teams it is. Hold on. Some teams start conference play before then. I have the first one is the 27th of September, which is ironically the Zach Bryan concert at Michigan Stadium.
It's my in-laws' anniversary as well.
There are 4 games on this date that I am looking at as will have implications to the overall Big Ten race playoff picture. The big one, obviously, the whiteout game, Oregon against Penn State. But also on this date, you have Indiana taking on Iowa. That is going to be a relatively significant early season test for the Hoosiers the week after they play Illinois. Could be a potential big letdown spot for the Hoosiers. Who, again, if they beat Illinois, I would anticipate being 4-0 heading into that game, and will still have some pretty significant playoff steam behind them. On the other side of that matchup for Iowa, depending on what happens with the Cyhawk game, that could be a humongous opportunity for them to make an early season statement. You also have USC Illinois this weekend. Again, Illinois having played Indiana the week before. That is a
You could be giving the axe to Indiana or Illinois after those two games after that weekend.
for sure. Yep. So that's obviously the loser of that game the previous week will need to have a big rebound. But for a team like USC that has a pretty difficult middle portion of their schedule, that is a significant opportunity for them to kind of assert themselves and kind of put themselves back in the national discussion. They start the season with literal ass for 4 weeks. Missouri State, Georgia Southern, at Purdue, and Michigan State. They should be 4-0 heading into that game. If they're not 4-0 heading into that game, I don't want to hear about USC for the rest of the year.
All right.
We're writing them off already. We're writing them off at the end of September. But
Ryan is, I'm not. USC fans.
Listen, if USC is 4-0 entering that game, they go to Illinois and they beat Illinois, then they have a bye week before they host Michigan and go to Notre Dame. There would be so much juice on that portion of the USC schedule if they were 5-0 heading into that stretch of games. That would be insane.
Absolutely.
So a chance for Illinois to either ride some momentum off of an Indiana win or stop negative momentum after an Indiana loss, or potentially a chance for USC to assert itself nationally. And then kind of an under the radar game, I have Ohio State at Washington on this date as well. Tough road trip, very difficult place to play for a young Ohio State team that I don't necessarily, well, they'll have Texas, so I guess they will have been battle tested by that point. It hasn't been battle tested, but depending on what happens, yeah, okay, easy. You have a couple of, you have 2 gimme games and a bye week to work off whatever kinks you find against Texas heading into that game. So it'll be a tough road test. Right. And then the second date I have is 2 weeks later, October 11th. On that date, we have another Ohio State game. We have Ohio State against Illinois. Again, depending on what happens.
Illinois might be dead by that point.
Oh, well, that's God. Yeah, no, well, yeah, because that's the end of 7 straight games for them to start the season. The good news for them is they at least get Purdue the week before, so
we'll tune up. Extra bye week.
Should be, in theory. But again, depending on what happens for Illinois early in the season, maybe they beat Indiana, maybe they beat USC, maybe they are 6-0 heading into this game.
Top
maybe
10, top 5 team.
Yep. There will be a ton of steam on them hosting Ohio State. I'm sure that would probably be a college game day and a big noon game all in one.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Elsewhere, we have Indiana at Oregon.
Oh.
That's going to be a big game.
I believe the last time Indiana was there, they did beat the Oregon Ducks.
Indiana coming off of a bye. Both teams actually coming off of a bye. That is 2 weeks after Oregon plays Penn State. So that will be the first time we see the Ducks after either a huge early season win or an upsetting early season loss. So big game for them. We touched on the Michigan USC game a little bit already, but we also have Iowa Wisconsin that weekend. So Iowa, as we talked about, has a couple of pretty significant early season challenges. The Cyhawk game, the second weekend of the year. Indiana 2 weeks before this, then they have a bye. So depending on where Iowa's at that point in the schedule, could be maybe a 5-0 Iowa team, a 4-1 Iowa team that is looking to create some momentum before they play Penn State the following week. So those are the 2 weekends that I had kind of circled as significant Big Ten weekends that will impact the overall. Because I didn't want to go, like you said, I figured like, well, let's just pull the big Oregon games, the big Penn State games, the big Ohio State games. Like, no shit. But that, I think, is pretty well encompassing and covers really the top half of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote the top of mine. Clearly, obviously, Penn State, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State would take the 1 slot. Penn State features 2 of the best games in the Big Ten season this year. My game that I had at the top, also at the list, was Indiana, Illinois, September 20th. I think there's a lot of early season impact on playoff hopes there for those teams. You discussed the dates thereafter. In one or both of these teams, even the winner, could fall off a steep cliff or could propel themselves to the top of the Big Ten early in the season. It would be very interesting. Or, I mean, maybe they divvy it up. Maybe you get one and the other one kind of pans out and they both only have one loss coming out of that. I don't know. My next one, I actually picked 3 games because it was Iowa and you already talked about them. But I think 3 of the games that just impact a ton, both from the standpoint of Iowa could actually make a playoff push, or if they're just playing spoiler to someone else's playoff hopes. And that is Indiana at Iowa, Penn State at Iowa, and Oregon at Iowa. They all get lumped together at one. They all have to go to Kinnick Stadium. Hopefully 1 or 2 of them will be at night. That's just a tough place to play. And all 3 of those teams were playoff teams last year. So dreams go to die at Kinnick Stadium. And I would be remiss if I did not include this one. Ohio State, Michigan at the end of the season. Yeah, here we are. The OSU homer calling out the game. Ohio State can have 2 losses already. They lose to Texas and Penn State. Maybe Illinois in there and they beat Penn State or one of the others. This could be a playoff eliminating game for Ohio State if they do not right the ship and beat Michigan. Though 9-3, not only would you lose to your rival 5 years in a row, they would then eliminate you from the playoff this year, which would only burn that much worse. Especially if this Michigan team is not sitting there at like 9-2. If they're sitting there at 6-5 and you lose that game, how that would sting. So I think just from the standpoint of that rivalry and where it is right now and the impact it could have on Ohio State. And Ohio State could very well be 11-0 heading into that game. And they lose it. And yes, it's 5 straight, but here they are, a la kind of 2024. They're in the playoff again, probably in the Big Ten championship. But if they're sitting there 9-2, their playoff hopes hinge on that game, barring the season being crazy. And then a 9-3 Ohio State gets in, but we'll see. But I think it's a really fun Big Ten slate. I don't want to rush summer by, man. I'm finally enjoying warm weather. But I think this year might have the ability from the standpoint of Big Ten fun matchups to top last year because the West teams are now acquainted to the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is deeper from the standpoint of competitiveness this year compared to last year. And I think it sets up for a really nice season. I don't know if you and I are going to get lucky and get our 2 favorite teams all the way to the national championship again. I actually would say Notre Dame probably has higher odds of that happening than Ohio State at this point in time. But it sets up for a really nice season, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be fun.
And it'll be great to talk about games again instead of just having to come up with summer content.
Yes. Good times.
All right, guys, if you joined us tonight, thank you very much. Again, check us out, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you can find us on social media, ITPCFB. Hit it, like us, subscribe to us, follow us, leave us a review. Hopefully it's a 5-star. Write us a review. Wherever you can find us, we're there. ITPCFB.
Thank you once again for joining Inside the Pylon, a Midwest College Football podcast for Clinton. My name is Ryan. We will be back with you guys on Monday, same time next week, talking about something else that I don't know yet.
Have to think of.
It'll be something. It'll be fun. It'll be enthralling. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Deuces.